Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. This is the weekly garden tour that I'm doing here in Raleigh, North Carolina, Zone 7B. Started on this project a couple years ago in an urban space in Raleigh, North Carolina. It's about 0.19 acres if you haven't followed along until now. Here's a link up in the corner to the playlist called New House, and you can catch up to where I am at this point. A lot of things happening here in this landscape. You can see this is probably the last week that the tulips will be in their total glory. This mix is called Dawn to Dusk. Really has been really stunning. My pansies are really jumping. We've got just absolutely perfect conditions for those right now, and you'll see several more sections of them throughout the landscape. One thing I want to point out this week is these Lian Clara, which actually get quite large. They're actually good screening plants, but I put 5 of them in here last year with the thought that I'm going to keep them between 2 and 3 feet, just kind of permanently. At some point they won't fit that space and they'll come out, but that's way out in the future. In the meantime, this is really incredible new foliage on these, and it does this anytime it's actively growing. So the fact that I'm going to have to prune them a couple times during the growing season is actually just going to add to how interesting they actually are. Above me here is the serviceberry tree that I planted last year. This variety is called Autumn Brilliance, and it's in full bloom right now. If you've never tried serviceberries, if I can get them before the birds get them, these are actually almost sweeter than blueberries. They're very similar size and texture to blueberries. They don't have the shelf life of blueberries, but they're incredibly sweet. This will be the last week that these Akebono tulips are looking great as well. I really enjoy this double. That Dawn to Dusk mix has been absolutely fantastic. And of course the Budlights, which I'll show you in just a second, are absolutely beautiful. But I do think these Akebonos have kind of stolen the show for me this year. When I said the Akebonos were my favorite, those Sans back here in the background, they're pretty daggone good as well. And I think most people have seeing the videos over the last couple weeks would probably vote for those. This is a Majesty Encore Azalea. This is one of the 2 new Encore Azaleas. It's a double purple, and you can see how this thing comes into how it comes into full bloom. So this is after having it in the ground for the first full year. In its second year, you can see how just absolutely covered. They're not fully open yet, but by the time it's fully open, within the next few days, it's just going to be solid purple, and then of course it'll do this again later in the season. This is a Lemon Glow Camellia. These are very small flowers. This was a very small plant last year, and it took a little bit of damage because it had not been in the ground for very long. But I finally have an almost perfect flower here that has that little bit of yellow in it, and of course the outside of the flower is white. But next year the flowers will be quite a bit bigger. New growth is starting down here, and so it should put on a little bit of growth, and then of course next year will be much more exciting plant. Over to the left of that is a Shasta Viburnum that just looks absolutely fantastic. There's nothing better than these Viburnum waking up in the spring. Shasta is one of the absolute best, but the foliage on these deciduous Viburnum as they wake up is always just amazing. They put on so much new growth. It looks so fresh, and it'll be absolutely covered in flowers over the next couple of weeks as we do these weekly updates. This Miss Kim Lilac is definitely going to be a show-off this spring. It is just starting to show a little bit of color, but you can see it's absolutely covered in bud. So I think next week when we do this video, should be in full flower, and the fragrance is just amazing. We don't have a lot of options here in the South for lilacs. That most of the lilac varieties require more cold treatment than we can actually give them. But this Korean lilac does fantastic here. I showed the Dr. Rupel Clematis last week. I think it had 1, maybe 2 flowers on it at that time, and it's growing out of these rocks. And it'll climb to the top of the fence pretty quickly here this spring. And that combo with those pipit daffodils is just amazing. And those pipits just bloom and bloom and bloom. The woodland phlox continues to shine back in this part shade area under this redbud. This redbud's probably 15, 18 feet in height. You can't get the color, unfortunately, of this phlox. It's much showier than what you're seeing in the camera. If the camera will come up some, you can see those Budlight tulips, the yellow tulips there in the background. They're almost done, but they are amazingly bright. These are Flower Parade daffodils. They're almost finished as well, but look at this, just amazing how showy they are. They look like paper mache, really. There's so much going on in that flower. I showed the small Chinese snowball last week, and it had this kind of lime green coloration, and you can see it's getting whiter and whiter. Only 3 of them on this very small plant that was a 1 gallon last year. These will typically repeat bloom in the fall, so I should have some more to show off at that time. I'm going to slide across the path and show you this Weigela called Shining Sensation, which is just starting to bloom. I think next week we'll see this thing really showing off. I like this dark kind of purplish foliage with this dark pink flower. It was really a big show off last year. It blooms for a long time. And then one other plant that I definitely want to show off is the tree form Encore Azaleas, since we're showing off some Encore Azaleas. This one was a 3 gallon that I brought back from Alabama last year and put in. It had a few flowers on it in the fall, but you can see it's going to have a lot more this spring, and of course it'll repeat bloom later in the season. Still really drawn to these black pansies. I put them in the same container last year, and you see that little splash of yellow is an Alabama Sunrise Heucherella. Those two look great together, and then that little grass-like plant up in the top, that's a Carex called Everglow, and all that texture and color just really look great together. You can see all these trays here on the back lawn. This is actually only half of the annuals and perennials that are being planted here over the next couple of weeks. We had a frost last night. There was some frost on top of the cars. Didn't look like it did any actual damage to any of the plants, but I think it's past now, and we'll be getting started here on this week on putting all these things in the ground. Since we're talking about Encore Azaleas this week, there's 3 in this area. The white one here, Autumn Lily, has not started to show any color yet. It will pretty soon. I can actually see, the buds getting bigger. The one in the container is Autumn Bonfire, and it's actually going to find a new home, and I'm going to put a new one in that container this season. It's been in there for a couple of years now, but you can see it's thing's putting on a giant show. And the one down below it is actually Autumn Fire, which is a dwarf red. Here you can see the difference between Bonfire and Fire. Bonfire clearly is a little bit more of a vigorous grower. Flowers are slightly larger. They may be a hair less red, but I'm probably not that big of a difference. Up above them is a Loropetalum called Carolina Midnight, and although it's in flower, last year literally I stood out here doing videos and no one could stop asking me what this thing was. I mean, it was the theme of the year, and this year you can see all of the damaged flowers on it from a cold snap that we had there in the middle of March, and so it's flowering, but it has very limited flowers compared to last year. You can see this yellow and blue pansy area. I did a video earlier this week showing how I expanded this bed a bit, so these pansies are going to be able to stay in place, and some other annuals will be planted in front of them. And so I'm going to have another couple months with these, and they've really started jumping in this cooler weather. Back up this way, I've got 3 autumn sunburst azaleas, and they're just getting started. I think next week we'll see this thing in absolute full color. The one behind it is called Starburst, not showing quite as much color yet. You can see the difference with Sunburst has more pink and a little bit of white variegation, and then Starburst, I'll pull one of these off actually so we can take a look at it, and you can really get a comparison between the two. Tell me down below which one of these you like better. This is Starburst with the white on the right, and or on your left, and the Sunburst is on the right. I put up a video showing this Solar Glow azalea this past week. This is a really beautiful variety. I had Solar Flare at the old house, which has more of a yellow center. These smell absolutely amazing. Just amazing. This is such a small plant to really be showing off that much. And I talked about in that video, the one thing that I think that makes this little series, the Sunbow series, really unique is just how clean the foliage is on this. So even after it's done flowering, it's really a nice ornamental plant. Coming back down the back path, well, I'm noticing right now that the Viburnum nudum, which is a native viburnum, is starting to bud up. So that should be something to show off here in the next couple of weeks. I hadn't seen those buds until just then. Let's see. This is a little honey oak leaf hydrangea. It's a gold oak leaf hydrangea. I planted this last year and it was a very full, round, nice plant. Something broke it, and I'm not quite sure what broke it off, but it's only going in one direction here. If I cared, I would probably go ahead and take this and stop this growth going this direction to really encourage some of that other growth. But I'm going to go with it and kind of see what it looks like here over the next, the rest of this season. If I feel like it needs to be rebalanced some, I'll do this. But it may end up actually looking kind of cool to only be going in one direction like that. I haven't pointed out, maybe I have in these videos, I've got several ajuga in the landscape. They're great at taking up space where, you know, to save on mulch. And of course they put on a big show right now. Purple variety here. There's a pink one back over where those autumn bonfire and autumn fire azaleas were back there. But I think this purple looks great with these Mojo pittosporum. And of course that Japanese maple hanging down into it as well. I think that color combination looks great. And then I'm going to show you what I think might be my favorite Encore Azalea, which is autumn lilac, and it's just really getting started here. It has a similar color really to that Autumn Majesty out front. Autumn Majesty is a double flower, and I think people are really going to be drawn to that. But I've always liked autumn lilac because it has such a compact habit. What you're looking at is a great looking ornamental plant. And in another week, it'll just be absolutely solid purple. And of course, it repeat flowers later in the season. So I think that's it for this week's update video in the landscape. There'll be lots more blooming every single week. I've put so many things have gone into this landscape that I think literally every week, more and more and more. You know, there's peonies right here next to this autumn lilac. I think might be showing color by next week. So thank you guys for following along with the channel. Lots and lots of content coming up, putting in all of those annuals and perennials that I showed you earlier in the video. So thanks for following along.